Welcome back, everyone. Today's Haunted New England tour takes us to Dudleytown, Connecticut. Connecticut's very own abandoned, cursed village. And Dudleytown is located up in Cornwall, Connecticut, up in the Litchfield Hills. Now, this was a village that is now a private gated community, and it's closed to the public. It has been, I believe, since sometime around the 70s or the 80s. I'm going to say maybe closer to the late 70s, 80s. I don't think I ever found an actual date of when it was closed down. But we'll get there as to why at one time you could go there, now you really can't. Supposedly, some people can. If the neighbors catch you, if someone catches someone who's not a resident on the land, there is a very real probability that you will become intimately acquainted with the Connecticut State Police or the Cornwall Town Police. So please don't go. I don't want you to get arrested, but I actually I wrote this script out the beginning of October because it was going to be my first one. And I felt a little funny about it. So it seemed far more appropriate to release this on Halloween. So this is another very detailed script, a lot like last week's on the on it of the dark swamp. It's also been a very long weekend with little sleep, so I'm sorry. Had a Halloween party, tried catching up, tried doing stuff yesterday, and just kind of run down, and then I had work today, so bear with me. I probably will be reading a little bit off of this, but anyway, back to Dudleytown. So now there's one thing to bear in mind about this location before we go into who the Dudley family is and how they got here. Dudleytown is located, as I said, in the Litchfield Hills. It is surrounded by 3 mountains: the Bald Mountain, Coltsfoot Mountain, and it's Bald Mountain, Woodbury Mountain, and the Coltsfoot triplets surround this area. It's a heavily wooded area. It's a dark forest. The sun has a hard time penetrating. It's very dense, especially now that the trees have reclaimed a lot of the area that was cleared. And what would happen is it almost had a microclimate where it would suddenly snow up in Dudleytown, and the town of Cornwall would not have anything. Now, what's also worth noting is that this was a village attached to Cornwall. So the residents of Dudleytown used the Cornwall Church. They would go there for the general store, probably doctor, whatever. So they were, I don't know how common this is outside of New England, but there's a lot of villages within towns. Because there's like Northford, which is part of North Branford. I think Devon, which is part of Milford. So there's a lot of these kind of sub-villages within larger towns. And that's what this was. Now, granted, this was in the 1700s. So how did the Dudleys get here? Well, it all starts with their descendant, Edmund Dudley, who was beheaded by King Henry VIII for treason. Then Edmund's son, John, the Duke of Northumberland, decides to try and install his daughter-in-law, Lady Jane Grey, to be the new queen, and that doesn't work. So they are both beheaded for treason. Thus, because of all of this, it was deemed that the Dudley family was cursed, and all of the residents would suffer different maladies, horrific deaths, bad luck, etc., etc., etc. You get where this is going. So when they came here into the New World, the curse migrated with them. So John's descendant, William, emigrated to Guilford, Connecticut during the Great Puritan Migration, or Puritan Great Migration. And that was in... it doesn't say when he got here, but it does say that somehow at some point he goes from Guilford to Saybrook, Connecticut, because from 1748 Gideon Dudley buys some land from Thomas Griffith, or Griffin, up in the Litchfield Hills, and then he moves up there. He moves his family up there. So they go from Guilford to Saybrook to Litchfield. So they go from the Connecticut shoreline up toward the New York border. If you're not familiar with how the state is laid out. So Griffith had settled the land himself in 1738. Gideon buys the land, and then by 1747 or 1753, I found two different sets of dates. Abel and Barzilla, his cousins, also move up there, and then eventually another cousin, Martin Dudley from Massachusetts, moves down. So the reason why the town came to be known as Dudleytown is because there were so many Dudleys that lived there. The whole family moved in together. Or not moved in together. The whole family ended up living in one village, along with some others as well. But there were a lot of the Dudley family that ended up landing there. Now, so of course the settlers go through, they clear the land, they build their houses, pour foundations, they make a home for themselves. They do all this. Sorry, those are my notes you hear rustling. It's very weird. I can't seem to write notes on a computer. I do better longhand. So that's why you always either see me looking down or lifting papers up. I'm weird. In case you hadn't figured that out yet. So now, as the Dudleys have settled in, they're creating this town. They're clearing the land. They're moving the rocks and they're building the rock walls. I think these are very common throughout most of New England, where you see like river stones and whatnot that have made their base. Sometimes they were property barriers. A lot of times these stone fences. So, and they start farming flax, wheat, corn. And now in 1792, we have the start of the curse. And it said that Gershon Hollister was murdered in a home owned by William Tanner, who lived next to Abel Dudley. And not long after the death of Hollister, Tanner starts talking about talking animals, about seeing all these wild animals. He's talking about demons before he completely buying the farm means he died. He goes completely stark raving mad, and yeah, he just went mad. That in 1774, all right, then we have 1774, an unidentified epidemic hits the town, which would happen everywhere occasionally. You have, cholera epidemics, flu epidemics, dysentery, smallpox. I mean, you understand where this is going. So an unknown epidemic hits the town, wipes out a good portion of the town, and it especially hits the Adornie and Carter house in Dudleytown and killed the entire family. In response, a second Carter family, it doesn't say how they're related or what their relation was, they move. They get out of Dodge. And it was said that the curse followed them. So the Nathaniel Carters, distraught from the loss, moved near Birmingham. The Nathaniel Carters, distraught from the loss, moved near Binghamton, New York, where Indians took the life of Nathaniel, his wife, and their infant by tomahawk. Carter's other 3 children were kidnapped to Canada, where 2 daughters were ransomed. The son David remained with his captors, married an Indian girl, and eventually returned to the U.S., where he got his education, became a lawyer, and was eventually elected to the Supreme Court. It was said, dodged the curse. All right, one of Cornwall's most famous residents also ran into tragedy. General Herman Swift, who served in the Revolution under George Washington, lost his 3rd wife, Sarah Fay, in April of 1804. when she was struck by lightning on her front porch. Some accounts say General Swift was slightly demented after this, and then others say he just was stark raving mad because with grief, he couldn't handle it. Now, if you're familiar with the name Horace Greeley, editor and founder of the New York Tribune, he married Mary Cheney, who was also born in Dudleytown. And guess what? They supposedly ran into tragedy too. Apparently, this curse has legs, so whether you lived in Dudleytown or were a Dudley, you were subject to it. And it was said that Mary hung herself on a visit home 1 week before Greeley lost his bid for president. Now, one of the last tragedies to befall the residents of this town that was actually recorded was at the end of the 1800s to one of Dudleytown's last residents, John Patrick Brophy. John's wife died of consumption. Shortly after, his 2 children disappeared into the woods, never to be seen again. It's possible that they were just running from the law after being accused of stealing sleigh robes. So after losing his family, Brophy's house burned to the ground. Some say maybe he did it. Others say it was just serendipitous. Regardless, he was never seen in Dudleytown again. And by 1899, Dudleytown was deserted and the forest started to reclaim it. So one of the residents from Dudleytown actually went back. Well, let's get to how it's Before I get ahead of myself, let me tell you about how it came to be a kind of gated community. So from 1899 to 1920, it's an abandoned town. No one goes there. All the residents have fled. And then in 1920, a doctor from New York decides to buy some of the property. Dr. William Clark, a cancer specialist from New York, came to Cornwall, fell in love with the land. He really liked it, built a summer home for him and his wife. Let me make sure I have the right. So he fell in love with the surroundings, built a summer home there. In 1924, together with friends and colleagues, Dr. Clark formed the Dark Entry Forest Association. The Dark Entry Forest Association is now who controls Dudleytown. It's also the name of the road, if I didn't mention it. It's also the name of the road you would use to get in there. It's called Dark Entry. Yeah. Little ominous if once we get on with the history of this place. But yeah, it's we'll just keep going. So it was formed as a nature preserve. However, there are houses there. Do with that what you will. The original charter stated the land would be forever wild, a nature preserve for its members to enjoy. In the mid-1920s, Dr. William Clark was called away to an emergency in New York City. His wife stayed behind, and lo and behold, it was said something from the forest attacked her, and she went completely mad and spent the rest of her life in an asylum. It's nice to know that, the forest, the curse just kind of stayed around and didn't go away. So now, here's the deal. Is there actually a curse? A lot of these things have actually been debunked. There was an existing Dudley family member who traces his lineage to the descendants who lived in Dudleytown, and they are not related to John Dudley or Edmund Dudley from England. It's a different family line. So he actually wrote a book about it saying that no, the family's not really cursed. They were not involved in this. All of the things I've just talked about have kind of been debunked. So the town of Cornwall lost half of its residents, down to 834 people, because so many people moved west. A lot of New Yorkers started buying up the land for weekend and summer homes. Of Texas is a descendant of Dudleytown's Dudleys. It says there is no relation with the English nobleman. Gershon Hollister was murdered. He fell from a rafter to his death during a barn raising. No one went mad. No one was cursed. The Carter family, the tragedy actually did happen, but here's the thing. They didn't move to New York. They moved to Delaware, right on the kind of the, I guess, the border with Indian Territory at this time. So, right in the middle of Indian Territory, all three children actually survived. And then, of course, their son did quite well for himself, becoming a lawyer to be elected to the Supreme Court. Let's see. Herman Swift never lived in Dudleytown. He lived to be 81 and also went a little senile. Horace Greeley's wife, never set foot in Dudleytown. She actually died of lung disease in New York City. And so now here's one thing that a lot of people do make note of. When you go to Dudleytown, it is eerily quiet. There's no noise, there's no animals, there's no birds, no insects, there's nothing. So it's said that that was part of the curse. It's that uneasy, eerie silence. Go and find out the area was sprayed with DDT sometime in the 60s, which some people attribute to the kind of eerie silence and why there's really no wild animals. So I did do some digging. I read through some blogs. And some of the people that have managed to go there have actually said, all that's left now are foundations. You can still see the stone walls, but it's just the I almost said concrete, but they didn't have concrete. The rock foundations for the houses, however they were built, that's really all that's left. And it is eerie. Some people have said that it is an eerie silence. It's very uncomfortable. It's a little creepy. And some people have actually made reports where they're like, well, no, we've heard birds singing. I've seen deer and rabbits. So different people have very different experiences. Now, in the 1970s, Ed and Lorraine Warren would host a TV broadcast from Dudleytown saying that it was indeed cursed, that there was less than favorable activity. There was, I guess, a demonic presence on the land. Now, what's funny is that the residents are like, we've never felt anything. No one's aware of anything, the people that live there. So then what ended up happening was with the Warrens' proclamation, a lot of people started going there. They would hang out in the woods. They would litter. There would be some rituals performed there or whatnot. So that's actually part of the reason why the society closed it to the public. Because in the interim, somewhere in, I think, the 1930s, 1920s, 1930s, when it was originally set up as a nature preserve, a lot of these people would allow the residents of Cornwall, other people from New York City, like it was a tourist attraction. There would be skiing, sledding, a lot of winter sports, stuff to do in the summer. It was open to everyone. Once this stuff started happening, the society was like, nope, had enough. We're done. I think it was just too much vandalism. Too many people wandering around the woods at night, trying to scare themselves, scare their friends, bonfires, maybe the local kids. So that's why it ended up being closed to the public. So while it is closed to the public, and while a lot of these things have been debunked, different people have different experiences. One thing that is noted, do not, under any circumstances, take anything off of the land. Don't take rocks, sticks, just leave it. Leave everything there. Because there are reports of people taking stuff with them and having runs of bad luck, weird dreams, spirits. Just don't do yourself that favor and don't do it. Just don't. Because if you're lucky, the easiest way to get rid of it is to just get rid of the item you've brought with you. You may not be that lucky, and something might decide to hang around. So, do yourself that favor. All right. Well, so ends our sojourn through haunted New England. I wish you all a very safe and happy Halloween. Happy trick-or-treating. And if you go out with your kids or friends, enjoy your Halloween parties if you're having any, or any celebrations you might be doing. Happy Samhain to those of you who celebrate. Happy New Year. Yes, Samhain is the Wiccan New Year, or at least for the Celtic practitioners. Different branches probably have different ones. But yeah, so as of this weekend, what is it, the 5th? 4th, the 5th? We will be back to our regularly scheduled programming. I think I might still do these, so please leave in the comments if there's any place you'd like me to look into, any other abandoned towns, villages, asylums, jails, etc., 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 and I will look into it. There will be notes and links in the description for where I got my information. A lot of this came from online sources, Damned Connecticut being one of them. It's been a while since I looked at them. I can't remember what the others were, but they will be in the links, or the links will be in the description for you. So you can do your own investigating. So be safe out there. Happy travels. Happy Halloween again. And until we meet again, my friends, bye.